What is going on, NBA fans and Nuggets Nation? I'm Tom Leuthner. Welcome back to Nuggets Today. We have 4 topics that I want to hop into here. All offseason moves, obviously. The first topic is, does Golden State going all in help Denver out at all? So if you go and look, if you do your research, Mike Dunleavy, who is the Nuggets GM, says that he wants to go all in. He wants to attempt to make Golden State a championship contender again, not just a playoff team. And I personally think that might be able to help Denver out more than anybody thinks if we can make the finances work. So a guy like Pat Spencer, a guy like Kuminga, their contracts are expiring pretty soon. I know that for some reason Kuminga wasn't getting minutes for Golden State in the playoffs, and I think that he'd be a great fit for Denver. So let's break it down a little bit. Is there a way that Denver can make the contracts work for Michael Porter Jr. to be sent over to Golden State and for Denver to get either Pat Spencer, whatever, backup point guard, but can we get Kuminga and either Trace Jackson Davis or Quentin Post? That would be amazing if you ask me. You get your backup center there. You get a guy in Kuminga who's a 3-and-D player. We haven't seen much of him, and he was supposed to be so great, and Golden State didn't want to play him. And I don't know what the reason is there, but they weren't giving him the minutes I think he deserved. I know it's funny if you look at the statistics of it that every time he put up 20 plus points, the Warriors lost. So hopefully that's not a Kuminga problem and Denver can figure that one out. But we've covered before why MPJ should be traded, obviously. And I've broken it down. And his contract isn't great. It's better than Jamal Murray's, but he's not as good of a player as Jamal Murray. But if you really look at it, it does help out both teams. You can look at Golden State's team and say that they lack the size, not off the bench, because obviously sometimes they don't start Trace Jackson Davis or Quentin Post and they play Draymond, but that starting lineup is very small, especially with Moses Moody at the 2 or Pods at the 2, Moses Moody at the 3, Jimmy and Draymond. Getting Michael Porter Jr. gives you a 6'10 small forward power forward combo, a guy who's able to extend the floor and shoot for them, which is exactly what they like, and he's a good defender when he's healthy. What Golden State gives back to Denver is a package for players they need. It gives them 2 or 3 guys, if you're able, obviously, to get Kuminga, Trace Jackson, Post, and, one of those 2 with Kuminga, and maybe Pat Spencer. Pat Spencer is just a throw-in, little gritty guy. He can maybe help Denver out. It maybe doesn't even matter. Maybe they just drop him when the trade happens, if the trade happens, obviously. But I think that it makes sense for both teams because if Golden State's going to go all in right now and they don't want Kuminga to play, even though they were saying they wanted to, they get a guy like Porter Jr. who can help them win the championship. He's not too old. Obviously, the injury history is there. But when it helps Denver is it gives Denver a defensive guy. It gives them a younger player that now they could sort of build around. Hopefully, you don't give him the kind of contract that you gave Porter and Murray because he hasn't proven that he deserves that kind of contract yet. But I think that helps both teams. And now there's only one person that's going to be able to make that work for Denver, and that is the new GM. So let's get into that. Right now, if you look at the race for Nuggets GM, it seems that Ben Tenzer is leading that race. Ben Tenzer is the Nuggets G League GM right now. And I was doing my research because I didn't know much about him, if I'm being honest with you. I was doing my research on him, and he's been in the organization since 08-09. He had left the organization, became a lawyer, which I think it's a positive because you have contract negotiations that are going to be tough because this guy's a lawyer and knows what he's doing. Like I said, he's been in the organization since 08-09, left and came back, but that also proves that he's been around the NBA. He's been around this organization. It seems that he could help us. There are some things that I think are pretty interesting and definitely help the GM standpoint. One thing that he's been doing for Denver is working with the international players and their visas, which I think is sort of interesting because you might not read too much into it, but that could be a sign that if he becomes the GM, they could bring in more international players because he knows how to work with them. I know he doesn't know how to work with them from a standpoint of being a coach or anything, but he knows how to work with them when it comes to their personal lives, and who knows what the players have to say about him. Who knows what a guy like Vlatko, who was most likely working with him, has to say about him. Who knows what a guy like Dario, who might have worked with him, has to say about him. Who knows what a guy like Jokic, because obviously he's been around the organization, it's not like he's brand new, has to say about him. I also like the fact that he was scouting for the G League and college players because I think knowing who's in the G League is fantastic. Look at a guy like Alex Caruso, came out of the G League, helped out OKC, helped out LA, helped out Chicago. If you know the players in the G League that are able to play, it makes it better for Denver. And that is the next topic I want to get into here is, can these summer league stars that Denver has perform? Obviously, Ben Tenzer knows who the summer league players are because he also worked with the G League, like I just said. And those players most of the time go to the G League. The first player I want to cover right now before we get into the next player, because the potential sleeper is actually another G League player. The first guy is a guy who's on the roster this year, Hunter Tyson. And I know people look at him, this isn't an NBA player, he's not NBA ready, he's not NBA caliber. Sure, I understand people understand that. And in the minutes that he got this season, you probably didn't see much from him. But if you look back at his summer league numbers, and I know these don't stand for everything, but if you look back at his summer league numbers, he averaged in 2023, 2024, so 2 years ago, he averaged 21 points, 54% shooting from the field, 50% shooting from three, 6 rebounds per game. You look at last year's numbers, they dropped off. Obviously, the bigger role went to guys who were going to come up this year, like Trey Alexander, like Strother, who played more games. You look this year, he put up 15 points, shot 31 from 3 and the field, which isn't great, but 5 rebounds, which isn't bad for a small forward, I guess shooting guard, small forward, power forward combo. They may never translate to the NBA, those numbers. And of course, that's something that we could always talk about because you always look back at former Summer League MVPs and Summer League players, and those things don't always translate. But all Denver needs is for him to come in and put up a quarter of those numbers off the bench for 5, 10, 12 minutes. And I think that he could do that. Why not give him more of a shot to shoot some threes? Like I was saying with Strother during the playoff run. This is a guy who we know can shoot because he's in our organization. He's getting the minutes, but he's not touching the ball. Before Strother touched the ball, he wasn't that big of a contributing factor outside of his defense, but when he was able to touch the ball, he went off and he did what Denver needed him to do. So why not attempt to get Hunter Tyson rolling like that? And maybe, just maybe, he could be a little bit of a sleeper pick for Denver to pick up, just like this next person that I'm going to jump into. And that next person is somebody I mentioned a couple minutes ago. That is Trey Alexander. Trey Alexander was dominant in the G League. And again, like I just said, I know the G League and Summer League don't really translate to the NBA at all times, but sometimes they do. And this guy in the G League was dominating. We'll look at his Summer League numbers first because obviously he was in the Summer League prior to the G League. But in 2024-25, he put up 17 points, 53% shooting from the field, 47% from 3, 5.8 rebounds, 3.8 assists. That's in the Summer League. So this is a guy who's playing with guys who already had the opportunity to play in the NBA, a guy like Strother, a guy like Hunter Tyson who's been on the roster for a few years. But when he went to the G League and had to carry a team of all G League players for Denver, he put up 26 points per game. He put up 5.7 rebounds, 5.7 assists, and he was on an all-NBA Summer League, or all-G League team, I guess it is. And the last point I want to get into here for Trey Alexander is we need a backup point guard, especially if Russ declines his option. We need somebody that could shoot. Those shooting splits are great. Maybe he's good enough for us to play and come in off the bench. But if Ben Tenzer becomes our GM, Ben Tenzer now has a relationship probably with these G League guys, and I think that could play a huge role in who we see on Denver's roster next year and who we see get minutes. I know hopefully it's not like a Calvin Booth situation where, well, I drafted these guys, they're playing, but we never know. Maybe, again, like I said, Trey Alexander could come up and be a contributing factor for Denver, and Ben Tenzer knows that because he has a relationship with him. Maybe Hunter Tyson could do that because Ben Tenzer has a relationship with them because he was their GM. He knows these players. He was there. He was in the organization when they were drafted. He's been around for a good amount of time. Hopefully, Ben Tenzer gets hired, does what everybody needs him to do. Again, who knows what the coaching situation is. But hopefully Ben Tenzer comes in, brings up a guy like Trey Alexander who might be able, I think he's better than Jalen Pickett. I don't think that Jalen Pickett's very good. And I was listening to a podcast with Ben Tenzer on it, and they were saying how Calvin Booth thought that Jalen Pickett was this amazing player. And like we've seen with a lot of other Calvin Booth projects, it didn't work out. So hopefully Ben Tenzer comes in, makes those decisions, brings up these guys from the G League. Hopefully they're developed, maybe lets them develop and brings them up in a little while, a couple of years down the line. But that's what you got to hope for, especially during the offseason. That's all I got for you guys today, Nuggets Nation. Thank you guys for checking it out. Like, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys soon.